now. Okay, everybody, welcome back for Eric DeCosta's media availability. As a reminder, please turn on your video when you can. Utilize the hand raise function. You'll be called on when you raise your hand. And please identify yourself when you ask a question. And with that, I'll open it up to Eric.
Hey, thanks, Chad. Well, first of all, nice to see everybody. I haven't really spent a lot of time with you guys lately since the draft. It's been a long time, and a lot has certainly transpired since then. What I can say is it was a very, very challenging season, rewarding season as well. I always say that, one of the hardest things I've ever done is graduate from Colby College. And I would say that this season, surviving this season and succeeding, getting through this season was probably right up there with that. Proud of the team. I think we overcame a lot of adversity, a lot of challenges, unique things that happened throughout the course of the season, in the off-season. The coaching staff did really a remarkable job getting us prepared to play every single week. I think in general the organization rallied around the team and put us in position to succeed every single day here in the building, facilities, everything, to give our players the best chance to win. And it was a unique season in many different ways, many different things that would pop up day to day. You'd think you had something figured out and something else would come up. But again, not the end result that we wanted, but we see progress with this team. A lot of young players emerged. Very proud of the way that we competed, especially the second half of the season with our backs to the wall to get in to the playoffs, all the different things we had to, handle to win those games. We won a playoff game. In the end, and I'm reminded of this as I'm headed down to the Senior Bowl today, actually, this afternoon, and there are going to be 29 other teams that feel the same way I feel. That sense of disappointment, but also a sense of optimism as we think about the future and what the team's going to look like next year. And so this is one of the great things about working in scouting is we never really have an off season. We call it the off season, but it's really our season. And that's the best part of my job is we can be eliminated and the next day you get right back and ready to work again. With your new mission, which is to build a better team than you had the previous year, and we will do that. I want to thank some people quickly, and then I'll open it up to questions. I want to thank Steve Bisciotti for his support, first and foremost. Dick Cass, I probably spent more time talking to Dick Cass in the last 3 months than I've spoken to Dick in the last 15 years. He's really been a great advisor to me and has helped navigate us through some situations. John Harbaugh, great coach, even better person, great friend. This was a season where we really needed John's leadership, especially, and he's just an amazing leader, a great person, and a phenomenal football coach. The scouting staff, specifically George Kokinis and Joe Ortiz, Ozzie Newsome, Pat Moriarty, Nick Matteo, who was our COVID czar in the building, did an amazing job this year, day to day. Probably, other than maybe Megan McLaughlin, who I want to make a shout out to as well on the coaching side, those two truly were the unsung heroes this year with all the different things that came up day to day with COVID, all the different protocols, the situations that we had to adjust to on the fly. The video guys, the facilities guys, Keith Matthews, Mark Bienvenu, Colin Ferguson, guys like that, the trainers, Andy Tucker, our doctor, those guys really did amazing jobs. And then finally the fans. Obviously it was a unique season and they couldn't really be there to support us as much, but we felt their energy, we felt their passion, and they also inspired us. And then you guys, it's a unique season. Your coverage of the team was outstanding. Don't always like it, but we love it in a lot of ways, and you bring people to the game. Again, challenging for you. You all have families. We understand that, and what you guys are asked to do this year in a unique situation, we appreciate that as well, and we thank you for your support and for what you guys do to make the game of football even better. So I'll open it up for questions.
Dave Ginsburg.
Hey, Eric, I'd say congrats for making the playoffs once again and your early part of your tenure. When you go into this offseason, do you see a lot that has to be done, or do you just tinker a little bit and then just add a couple of pieces here and there? And sorry to stretch this question out, but do you feel strapped by the salary cap, or do you think it's forgiving for the mission that you have?
Well, I think, Dave, we certainly want to get better at every single position if we can. We think we have a good foundation of young players. This is a very young team in comparison to Ravens teams of the past. We've also got a nice, I think, mix of veteran players scattered in at different positions who can provide perspective and leadership, and they're very good players as well. I think that there are certain areas of the team, and it's still early. We just had our personnel meeting last week, but there are definitely some areas of the team that we want to improve. And we will continue to do that, through the draft and through free agency. I think we anticipate having 6 or 7 picks this year, probably 6 right away. But as you guys know, we like to add picks, and that'll probably be something that we try to do throughout the course of the draft or prior to the draft. As far as the salary cap goes, I think it's such a strange phenomenon because we are actually probably 11th or 12th best in the league in terms of salary cap room, and we anticipate that number being somewhere between 15 and 20 million. However, that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, and that's based on a projection of between 175 million and 180 million dollars of salary cap room. So we like the positioning we are in. I think there's about 14 or 15 teams this year that are actually over the salary cap. We see that as an opportunity for the club to really improve, but it's an unusual dynamic. And there is going to be, I think, some challenges for teams to get under the cap. We'd like to have more room than we have. $15 to $20 million is not a lot of money. But when we judge ourselves against our competitors, we feel that we have an opportunity to use that to our advantage.
Jeff Schrebeck.
Eric, there's a lot of talk this offseason about fixing the passing game, and John addressed it last week. In what ways do you feel like you have to address the passing game as a whole?
Well, Jeff, I think one of the things we have to do is get better up front with pass protection. I think losing Ronnie Stanley was definitely a tough deal for the offensive line to handle. I think Orlando did a great job, and I think the offensive line in general really battled versus some adversity this year. But pass protection is going to be a factor. I think that, having an OTA this year, if we can, more practice time would be a big thing. We've got some young receivers that would benefit from more practice time and OTAs in an off-season. We'll look at the personnel as well. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. There's all receivers come in all different sizes and shapes. We've got the draft. We've got free agency. I think one of the things, as we think about the passing game is we throw the ball a lot less than a lot of other teams do. That's by design. We're a running football team. And people like to look at, yards per game as a good metric of a passing game. And I think we threw the ball probably 150 or 160 times less than any other team did this year in the NFL. And so we want to be precise for sure. I think that we want to be more efficient. Some of that is simply reducing penalties. We were highly penalized this year. We had a lot of pre-snap penalties. That's not an ideal thing for a team that wants to be a passing team. We've got to do a better job in that regard. And I think turnovers as well, reducing the amount of turnovers. We had a bunch of turnovers this year, for instance, before the half. So there are a lot of things we can do. It's not all about getting the, quote, number one receiver that everybody likes to talk about. We will certainly look at that. We would try to upgrade every single position on this football team this offseason if we can, based on the parameters of what we have to work with draft pick-wise, money-wise, and all the other challenges associated with building a football team.
Jamison Hensley.
Hey, Eric, as you know, Lamar Jackson is a popular topic around Baltimore. Do you anticipate, or will you go and approach Lamar about a contract extension this offseason? And is there any chance of that happening this year?
Well, there's certainly a chance of that, and I will be talking to Lamar probably within the next 10 days or so. He's down in Florida, but we've got a great relationship. He's got a great relationship with this organization. He's a very easy person to talk to, and certainly deserves a contract. He has played phenomenal football over the last couple of years, and our intention and my intention is to keep him in Baltimore for many, many years.
Charles Walker.
Yeah, hey, Eric. Following up on your answer to Jeff's question, do you think it's less important for you guys to have that quote-unquote number one wide receiver because it's a lower volume passing game? And I guess if you did choose to go after one of those guys who's projected to be at the top of the free agent market, do you feel like your cap would allow you to do that if that's where you wanted to go?
Well, Charles, I think we want to have really good players at every position. We want playmakers. We want guys that can stretch the field. We want guys that can catch the ball inside and third downs. We want guys that can scare the defense and allow us to be flexible and balanced up front on offense. We don't want to be a team that's forced to do anything. We want to be a team that can dictate to the defense what we want to do. And I think, part of that is being a team that can run the football, a big, physical, mashing style offense, which is what we've seen in the past from us. We are a running team. We want to be a big, physical offensive line. We want receivers who can make plays. We want tight ends who can make plays. We want to not give the defense a chance to get used to what we're doing. And so as far as that goes, with the salary cap, there are some unique challenges this year. With not even knowing what the cap's going to be. The cap could be 175, it could be 185. We don't really know yet. That's going to pose some problems. We've done some deals. We did some deals this offseason. We extended Marlon. We extended Ronnie Stanley. We did an extension with Jimmy Smith. We'll continue to do that. And when you do those kind of deals, you do eat up some cap room and you reduce your flexibility to sign other players. That being said, we like our positioning with the salary cap. We see some other opportunities for us to do some things, to get some additional cap room. We'll be strategic, we'll be targeted, but we'll have some players we definitely want to go after.
Ryan Mink.
Eric, outside linebacker is a tricky position this offseason with the 4 pending unrestricted free agents. Can you talk about how difficult that is going to be to navigate and kind of what your thought process is at outside linebacker right now?
Well, Ryan, we were fortunate. We were 6 deep this year, and we had a stable of guys, and we could roll different guys out based on the teams that we were playing. We love that versatility. We love the fact that we had 12 legitimate pieces in the front 7 this year that we could roll out on game day in terms of defensive line and outside linebackers. We may not have that this year. We may have some turnover on the roster. We understand that. Again, the salary cap sometimes dictates the players that you can have on the team. But we do see some opportunities to bring some guys back. There's certainly some guys we want to target out of the gates. We do feel that we've got some younger players that have a lot of potential to help us. And we've also got, again, the draft. We see that the draft looks pretty good this year in terms of outside linebackers and pass rush type guys. And there's also some guys in free agency on other teams that would be of interest if we can't bring some of our guys back.
Pete Gilbert.
Hey, Eric, just philosophically, going back really to Earl Thomas, the deal, that you didn't get a chance to bring him in and really meet with him ahead of time, and then it ended up not working out, which seemed to be a lot of it personality-wise. Does that change, or maybe you've done a whole lot of that before, but I wasn't really familiar that you had. Does that change the way you maybe want to go about the future in terms of free agency and making sure you get a chance to meet in person, do those things, or was that just, hey, sometimes it just doesn't work out?
Anytime you work in personnel or in scouting, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to swing and miss. You try to hit, more hits, more home runs than you strike out. And so, for every player that we might have missed on, I'd like to think that we'd have an Eric Weddle or a Calais Campbell or a Mark Ingram or somebody like that comes in right away and provides leadership and a foundation for your younger players to emulate. So, we talk to a lot of different people and we do our homework, I think one of the things that I have to be better at probably is I'm an aggressive personality, and I need to be at times patient and not, rush up and swing at the first pitch, to use a baseball analogy. I need to take a pitch, and that's on me. But in general, I think we do talk to a lot of people. We do our homework, and I am very, very proud of the job that our pro personnel department has done in terms of looking at personalities and does this guy play like a Raven? Does this guy live like a Raven? I'm really proud of the job that those guys have done, and I think if you go back and look at our guys that we brought in here over the last 5 to 10 years, you'll see evidence of that. I think that with the draft, it's oftentimes more easy to get information because you're spending 9 months on these guys and you're talking to a myriad of sources at schools and different people and a network of people that you can call on. Pro personnel is tougher, but it can be done, and I think we do a pretty good job of it.
Aaron Kazimits.
Hey, Eric. Last year, obviously, the offseason got thrown into chaos kind of, midway through. Approaching the offseason this year with no combine and all the pandemic challenges, what do you see as maybe some of the biggest things, maybe things people aren't talking about that are going to be affected by the unusual nature of things?
Well, I think fortunately that we were able to prepare. We started preparing for these types of things last May, and one of the things that we did was we had a bunch of guys working on a committee in-house that was looking at the possibility of no college football and no combine and things like that. We had to do a lot of these things last year because we didn't have a typical, draft build-up. And so we were doing our meetings in Zoom-wise, and we weren't working guys out. We weren't getting the individual in-person interviews that we would normally get. We weren't having the pro days. We weren't getting all the numbers. So we were forced last year to navigate this. So I think we actually, in a lot of ways, are more prepared this year than we were last year. That being said, last year we did have a combine. This year we won't have a traditional combine. We will get a lot of the information. We'll have to be more flexible. I think we've got great area scouts, the best in the league. We will rely on those guys for sure. Those guys will get us the information, as much information as we can get. We've got excellent doctors and trainers and support staff, and we will be able to have a draft, and we will feel comfortable that we will have all the information that we can. There will be some differences. There will be some challenges, no doubt. I'm a traditionalist. I believe in the combine. I believe in workouts and pro days and interviews and all those things. But I remind myself that we didn't have these things last year, and I feel like the draft last year for us was pretty good. So I have reason to think that this year will be no exception.
Rick McEwen.
Hi, Eric. How satisfying is it when you see your rookie class come in without having a training camp and all that and add to the team, and just the guys that you looked at and thought would add something actually did?
I was proud of the rookies this year. The maturity that they show day to day. It's a long season. The NFL season is a very long season. To not have any OTAs, to not have a traditional training camp is a credit to them, and very much a credit to our coaching staff as well for getting those guys ready to play. And I was happy that most of our guys were able to contribute throughout the course of the season. We had very few guys hit that proverbial rookie wall. And, we actually saw some guys play their best football down the stretch late for us. If you want to talk about guys like Justin and J.K., who became really important parts of the team late in the year. So that's always a great thing. Now the challenge is to build on what they did this year and really make themselves even better players next year.
Jerry Coleman.
Hey, Eric, I don't know if you got a chance to see Coach Harbaugh's press conference with us last week. I did ask him about trying to attract a top free agent wide receiver in an offense which you said is built around the run. How do you accomplish that when a lot of these receivers, and I know what he had to say, but a lot of these receivers are paid on catches and not for blocking purposes?
I'll just call on a line from The Godfather. I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. No, I don't know, Jerry, it's hard, I don't really think too much about that. Basically what I do is evaluate the players, and then if we like them, we'll call the agent and we call the player. If they want to play for us, great. If they don't, okay. That's just the way it is. It's not a lot of rocket science involved. You're not really saying, well, I don't want to play for you guys. I've never had a player yet say to me, I don't want to come play for the Baltimore Ravens because you don't throw the ball. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will. Most of the time what I get is, I hear you guys are an amazing franchise. I know players who have played for you guys and love the experience. You're a great team for veteran players. I want to play with Lamar Jackson. I love your defense. Baltimore's a town I want to be in. I've played against you guys. I love your fan base. Your stadium's amazing. That's what I hear. I've never heard, well, you don't throw the ball, I'm not going there. There's always an exception, but I haven't heard it yet.
Mark Viviano. Sean Stepner.
Hey, Eric, good to see you. My question is along those same lines. When you say that you're you throw a lot less by design, do you anticipate that design changing at all regarding passing more? And if so, does that rely on Lamar improving certain points of his game over the offseason regarding passing?
Well, I would think that, Lamar, being who Lamar is, Lamar wants to improve. I mean, I want to improve too. I mean, we all want to improve. You wouldn't be in this business unless you just constantly want to get better, just like you guys. So that goes without, I think saying that we all want to get better, and that's on the quarterback, that's on the receivers. As far as the scheme and all those types of things, that's the coaching staff and that's the players. That's Greg Roman. I don't really get too caught up in all that right now. I'm more interested in what time it is, more so than how to actually build a watch. So, I would defer to Greg and all those guys on how do we do that, what we want to do, and they'll have ideas personnel wise and the type of players that we're looking for. And I get a lot of value out of that, just sitting down with Greg and the coaches and talking about the specific types of players that we want. What type of tight end are we looking for? What type of receivers are we looking for? What kind of traits do we want our offensive lineman to possess or our running back to have? So those are the things that really help me build the team. And then what I try to do is supply the players, the coaches with those kind of players, and then the players and the coaches go to the lab and present the product.
Just a quick follow-up. Is it something that you think, improving in the passing attack and getting better in that regard is something that you need to do to keep up with the teams that, as we see in the championship game, in the Super Bowl now and the Final Four?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said, I think I've answered this question, but, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve, and one of those is reducing penalties. I mean, we were highly penalized. Turnovers off as well. I watched those games yesterday, and I think one of the issues that one of the teams had yesterday was they couldn't run the ball, and they didn't keep the other team off the field. So I think the fact that, let's not forget now that we have a running attack that's probably the best in football and probably the best in the history of football. That's to our credit. And we want to be good at everything. We don't want to be a great offense and a great defense and be terrible on special teams. We don't want to have a great special teams and be really good on offense and be a terrible defense. Last year we felt that we had to improve on defense up front, and we did that. And so, we have ideas of what we have to do to fix the team, and we will do that. We will work on that. I'm not going to say right now, sitting here today, that, we're going to do all these different things to improve the passing game. It's going to take place over a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 month period of time, but we would like to improve in many different areas. We did not accomplish our ultimate goal this year, and we've got to find out why, and we've got to be able to do that next year.
Paul Smolka.
Hi, Eric. So much talk about the Lamar Jackson contract extension, but you've also got Mark Andrews, you've got Orlando Brown, others. But do you anticipate extension talks with Mark Andrews this offseason? And is the chance of extending Orlando Brown affected by the long-term contract of Ronnie Stanley?
Yeah, good question. I think a couple of years ago when I was doing my first press conference, we said that we would try to do more deals. We would try to sign up more players on our team, and we've done that, and I'm proud of that. And a lot of the credit for that really does go to Pat upstairs, Pat Moriarty and Nick Matteo. But it's something that evolves over time. These types of things don't just happen arbitrarily. And in the case of, say, Ronnie Stanley, that took place over the course of almost a year that we had discussions back and forth with Kim and with Ronnie and with Marlon and Joel Siegel and all these different players that we've done deals with. So, we want to keep our good young players. I mean, that's something that as I thought about myself and being a GM, I really wanted us to try and do. We have these players, we draft them, we like them, we know them, they really fit us, and we want our fans to be able to reap the enjoyment of these players over time, if we can. Again, based on the parameters of the salary cap. So we will continue, to engage in talks with all of our good young players and try and sign as many guys as we can. And sometimes you just can't get a deal done. Sometimes you can. And it's great when you can, but sometimes you can't. And you can't sign, I learned this from Ozzie, you can't sign everybody, That's a challenge. But, we will try to keep as many good young players as we can. We believe in an offensive line. We believe in being a strong offensive line. We want to have the best offensive line we can. And Orlando had a great year this year. We are a tight end-centric offense, and Mark Andrews, in my opinion, is one of the better tight ends in the entire NFL. He's a Pro Bowl tight end, in my opinion. So we would be foolish to not want to try and keep him. Those discussions will start up at some point, and hopefully we can make progress and get some deals done.
Eric Downing.
Hey, Eric, you've used the trade market a number of times in your time as GM, Calais Campbell, Marcus Peters. Do you see the trade market as an avenue to try to upgrade the roster this offseason?
Well, we look at all that stuff, Garrett, all the time. I think teams know that they can always call me if they want to make a trade, and we'll be aggressive and we'll be proactive and we'll call teams. And I'm always willing to listen. We've made a lot of trades. I love trades. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, but they're fun. I think it's one of the great aspects of this job is having a chance to wheel and deal and make some trades, especially if you can minimize the risks involved and get a guy that can help you win some football games. So we'll look at all that. We don't have quite as many picks this year as I'd like to have, partly because we made a trade. But we do think that we have a chance to get some comp picks. We may get one or possibly two comp picks this year. We'll be ready for that. And certainly, as we get to the combine, I'll talk to teams, talk to GMs, talk to coaches. We kind of, keep our ears down to the ground to listen to different things, what players, teams are going to shop, try to find value for the team. Everything we do is based on the premise of value. Can we gain value from that transaction? If we think we can, we'll make a move.
Luke Jones.
Hey, Eric, I know you were asked about outside linebacker, but you just mentioned value. With today's game, quarterbacks getting the ball out quicker and quicker, how has that kind of impacted the overall evaluation of edge rushers? I guess especially when you look at analytics and there's generally a sense that coverage on the back end is valued a little more than creating pressure.
That's a great question. We've looked at that, and for sure this year, quarterbacks got the ball out faster than ever before. I think going back maybe to 2013, actually, quarterbacks threw the ball, got rid of the ball quicker this year. We faced a lot of teams this year that were the fastest teams at getting the ball out of their hands. Sacks were down this year in the league. Pressures were down this year. I still think you've got to have a pass rush, especially when you're playing play-action type teams. That's a critical thing. But there are a lot of teams this year that refuse to be sacked, and the ball is coming out very, very fast. We saw that quite a bit. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to be fast on defense, you've got to stop the run, and you've got to tackle very, very well. But you've also got to have pass rush. You can't just, disregard the pass rush. You've got to have a pass rush. You've got to be able to get the quarterback uncomfortable. I think Wink does a masterful job of that, using our pass rushers and also pressure packages and things like that. So, we'll always be a team that's aggressive on defense. We'll always be a team that's coming at you in different ways. We do love our depth in the secondary. We love where we are right now. And what we learned this year, again, is you can never have enough corners. And we say it every year, but this year was a great example. We had a bunch of guys go down at different points in the season. We played with a lot of different combinations. And we were able to survive and really flourish in many ways back there, despite the different personnel packages and people playing.
Stan Charles.
Eric, congratulations on a really interesting and successful season. I wanted to talk to you about the center position. In 2 games this year, you had 2 different centers almost implode in the New England game and then in the playoff game at Buffalo. How do you fix that problem? And is Bradley Bozeman a potential fix at that position? I remember when he was drafted, he was listed as a center. Thank you.
Well, I would defer to the coaches on Bradley. I mean, Bradley's played center, but we'll play who we think should play at that position. We do have some other guys that can play the position. We had a couple games this year, as you allude to, that we didn't snap the ball very well. Both of those games, incidentally, were games with really bad weather conditions, high wind, rain, monsoon up in New England. We've certainly got to do a better job of getting the ball back to the quarterback. We think we've got some options at the position, and we've got some good young players. What I like about the offensive line is we've got a lot of really good, nice young players. We're not sure who those guys are going to be that are going to emerge and be the starters for us, but we've got good depth, what I would call shallow depth. We've got some guys that can play. A lot of guys have played for us. A lot of young players, emerging talents. We'll also have a chance, I think, with the draft and free agency to augment those positions as well. So Bradley's an important part of the mix. We've got some other guys that can play that position as well. We'll find the best 5 guys and the best backups behind them, and we'll start out in September.
Nate Davis.
Thanks for the time, Eric. I just wanted to, you touched on the COVID pandemic in your intro, and you guys obviously navigated a real challenging period. I was just curious from an organization standpoint, an operational standpoint, what things you might like to see the league carry over once we're beyond it, and maybe just your organization specifically.
Well, first of all, I give the league a tremendous amount of credit for their counsel and their advice. And, I think a lot of people, probably a lot of you guys, never imagined that we would be at this point having played a full season. And, we're at the edge of the end of the season, the Super Bowl, and we've played and we've managed it and we've done really, really well. And I would have to give a lot of credit to the league. It hasn't been easy, not without challenge. But I think they've been resolute. I also give a lot of credit to the players for what they've had to endure, and the staffs and the coaches and the people in the buildings. It has been unusual, to say the least. And I would love to think that we can get back to normal next year. I'm not sure what we'll do. I think we've all gotten used to different things, Zoom, off-site meetings, a lot of different things, the way we travel, restrictions. For me, the biggest challenge has not been eat on the plane after the games, because I love those Popeyes chicken sandwiches, and those were banned. We couldn't eat on the plane this year, so that was something that I'd love to see get back to normal next year. But I think just the way that we do things, you get used to it over time. You get tougher. You sort of build up some scar tissue, and you realize that you don't necessarily have to meet in person anymore. I don't love having a mask on when I have a player in my office and we're talking. It's a tough way to communicate, but you get used to it. It's all these little things that we've had to change. And, yesterday was the first day since July 15th that I didn't have a COVID test. I didn't have to get tested yesterday for the first time. Now, I did get tested today, and I'll be tested all week down at the Senior Bowl again. But yesterday was my first day, and that was kind of nice not to have to get up on a Sunday morning, even when you don't have a game, and come over to the facility and get your COVID test. So there will certainly be changes, and there will be some things next year that we have to endure again. But again, it's routine, it's habit, it's how you interact with people. It'll get easier. I'm sure the league will have some restrictions again next year, some things that we have to continue to do differently. But, there were some positives too. As I look back on it, there were some other things that became positives this year that we never thought possible that we were able to do and there's also a beauty in that as well.
Daniel Oyafusi.
Hey Eric, there's been a couple reports that Morgan Cox has told people that you guys aren't expected to resign him or extend an offer to bring him back. I'm not sure if it's something you can comment on now, but just overall, what has he meant to the organization over the past 11 years?
Well, I did have a meeting with Morgan last week, and it's almost a circle of life at times, and you have to continue to get younger as a team. And as you all know, we had Nick Moore, and we kept Nick, in the practice squad most of the year, and he had a chance to snap in a game for us. And he's a younger player, and we felt that although it was very, very difficult to move on from Morgan, it was probably something that we needed to do long term. And so we made that transaction last week. We got Nick signed up, and I had a conversation with Morgan and told him that we would not be offering him a contract moving forward. It's tough because, in my opinion, Morgan has been really one of the better Ravens of the last 11 years. His attitude, he's overcome some injuries, his performance, just his general demeanor, his ability every single day to come in and be a leader, and his attitude, and just the way that he practices, and his personality. And we've been blessed for many, many years now with the Wolf Pack, with Morgan, with Sam, with Justin, to have probably the best combination of punter, long snapper, and kicker in the league. And things change. Unfortunately, it's a tough part of this business. But Morgan, his class, his performance, his just everything about him will be missed and cherished in many ways. And I will think of him as the best long snapper in Baltimore Ravens history. And as good as he is, as a long snapper, he's a better teammate and a better guy.
Kevin Richardson.
Hey, Eric, at 24 years old, Lamar Jackson is the veteran in the quarterback room with the release of Robert Griffin. Do you think that you'll be bringing in a veteran to back him up, or are you pretty happy with the two young men you have, Trace and Tyler?
Well, Calvin, honestly, based on what we saw this year with Trace and with Huntley, we were impressed. We think both guys have a legitimate chance to compete for that backup position. It doesn't mean that we won't go after a veteran quarterback, but we think both those guys have pretty bright futures, and we see a good competition this year. Let's not forget that we had no preseason games last year, and those games are critical for young quarterbacks to play in. And I remain very optimistic that those guys, with a really, really good normal offseason with some preseason games, will have a chance to really flourish and be that guy for Lamar. And we're fortunate that we have two guys. So we really have three quarterbacks. And both of those two young guys are smart. They're accurate passers. They're athletic. They're hungry. They've been successful college players. And when they've played, they've shown the ability to really be a backup quarterback in the NFL and help us.
Karpovich.
Hey, Eric. You referenced the tight ends earlier. Looking back at last season, you guys traded Hayden Hurst, and you went into the season with Andrews and Boyle as the two main guys, and then Breland and Wolf came in. They both got hurt. What are you going to do with the tight end room this year? Do you think Breland and Wolf would be the type of guys who can step into a role, or look at the free agency or the draft to sort of add depth there at tight end?
Yeah, well, we have Pat, too. Now, Pat's kind of a hybrid fullback tight end, but he did a lot of tight end type stuff for us this year as well. So, it was a different room. It was a different situation this year. I think the coaches did an awesome job of using the personnel that we had to make us as successful as possible. I think Breland is a possibility. Wolf's a possibility. They're both young players. They'll have a chance to compete to be the third guy this year. Or fourth guy, whatever that might be. We'll look at personnel. We'll look at free agency. We'll look at the draft. And certainly we're very much a tight end-centric offense. So if there's a tight end there available in the draft or somebody else, if somebody else happens to fall to us in free agency, we would certainly look at that as a possibility. And we know that Greg can take those tight ends and really go to the lab and find some ways to use these guys to make us more productive in offense.
Jonas?
Eric, I know you guys have invested a lot in run defense primarily, over the years. When you face a team like Buffalo that doesn't even bother to throw the ball, doesn't even bother to run the ball in the first half, and you see pass-happy teams like the Chiefs and Bucks make the Super Bowl. Does that change the calculus at all in terms of what you guys value, in the trenches there? With I know you guys have some potential decisions there this offseason.
Not really. I think we have a vision for what we want to be as a football team. We're going to be physical. We're going to be imposing. We're going to stop the run. We're going to be a team that loves to run the football. We're going to protect our quarterback. We never want to be one-dimensional. I think there are some examples of one-dimensional teams that, don't make it, don't get there. I think looking at the Chiefs, and we saw yesterday, the Chiefs played good defense yesterday. I think they held the Bills to, beside the quarterback who had some scrambles, they held the Bills to, probably 30 yards rushing. So I think we really want to adopt the mindset. We have the mindset that we want to be good in every phase. You can't be a great passing team and have a poor run defense, because then you won't have a chance to pass the ball. You won't have a chance to run enough plays. You want to be a good special teams team. You want to have a good kicking game. You want to be a team that can be efficient and run the ball and control the clock when you need to. You want to be a good 4-minute offense so you can put teams away at the end. You want to be good before the half. You want to have a passing game that can overcome a 10 or 14-point deficit. It's everything. It's not one thing. You don't want to be a one-sided team. I hate that idea of being a one-sided team, and that's not something that I aspire to. So we are going to be good in every phase if possible. We'll look at our strengths and weaknesses and tweak it every single year, but we want to be a balanced football team across all fronts.
Aditi?
Hi. You talked at length about all the changes you've had to make this year because of the COVID restrictions and the rules. Is there anything as you look forward now to the draft process, to working these guys out, that's maybe a little innovative or different? Some ideas that you have that maybe you haven't implemented at all, so you can approximate what's missing?
Well, that's a great question, Aditi, but if I answer that question, I'm going to be giving all that information to other teams, which I really don't want to do. I think
keep it amongst ourselves here.
I think what we try to do, as I said, we spent a lot of time this offseason talking about ways that we can exploit the process and gain an advantage. We're always trying to find a way to gain an advantage over the other teams. And so that's what we'll try to do. We've built out an analytics staff of, 4 or 5 men and women that are very talented. And we use them a lot. They help us in a lot of different ways get information or approximate information that we may not be able to get. Technology is a big thing, networking. I think our scouts, we had some great ideas this year that we were able to implement early on to find a way to fill in all the blanks, get information that maybe we can't get, for instance, on a school call. We couldn't go into schools this year. So how do you get the information about these guys? Those types of things. There's a lot of other things as well. And, again, I'm proud of our guys. It's something that we take very, very seriously. I think our area scouts are a huge part of this. And, we've been able to keep and develop scouts over the years very well. We've got a very veteran group of guys with great contacts. It's the blending of the traditional scouting and the science, okay? It's the GPS, it's the analytics, it's all these other things that we can use to help us make decisions that hopefully will help us be better than everybody else this year.
Just Rebeck?
Eric, I know you're probably not allowed to comment about the particulars, but is there any resolution in the Earl Thomas situation, or as far as that over, or as far as you're concerned, there still needs to be a hearing and all that?
Well, that's ongoing. There's some different moving parts. So I'll sort of answer that question like that, and just say that it's ongoing. When we have some news in that regard, we'll report it to you all. But it's just something that is another part of this off season that we'll continue to look at. And there's always a lot of different things, and there's all these different elements to an off season. We don't even know what the salary cap's going to be yet. It's hard to build a football team without a salary cap, not knowing what the salary cap is going to be. So the Earl Thomas situation is just one part of that, but there's a lot of unknowns, and as we begin to get information when checking off all these different boxes, we'll have a much better idea on how to proceed this offseason.
Jamison Hensley.
Hey, Eric, I know you did the one transaction and you let go Mark Ingram was a couple weeks ago. Do you foresee any other players let go as far as for just cap reasons before free agency?
Hard to say because I don't know what the cap is going to be. You know, I mean, once we get more information, it becomes easier for us to look at. You know, the situation with Mark, I can just say that, you know, we discussed that with Mark and his people, his agents, and we gave them the choice. We asked them what would they prefer. Would they rather, you know, wait for the transaction or whatever it was? We felt Mark had earned the right to be able to make that choice himself, and we deferred to him, and we did as he wished.
All right, we have time for two more. We'll go Mark Viviano and then finish it out with Ryan Mink.
Hey, Eric, you described earlier how free agents view the Ravens. You guys clearly are one of the top franchises in the NFL. You play in the AFC where the Patriots had a dynasty for almost 20 years. The Chiefs look like a team that could be good for a while. I'm wondering, how do those other teams color your standard of success or your definition of what is successful?
Well, I think players look at us as a franchise that has a commitment to being the best we can be. It starts with ownership. You know, we spend as much money as we can on players every single year. I mean, you look at how much money we spend. We're always going to spend up until the cap, and in many cases, cash over cap every single year to be the best team we can be. We've got a great facility. I think our schedule, the way that we handle players, the way that we treat veteran players is great. You guys see that every single day. We've made the playoffs, what's that? I don't know, 9 or 10 times in the last however many years. I lose track. Multiple Super Bowls. I mean, there's a lot of things that make us a great place to play. I think veteran players contact us quite a bit, asking to play for us or wanting to play for us. And then it's just players. I mean, we've gotten over the years, I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've had some of the best players in the history of the NFL play for us, and players want to play with them. You know, players want to play with Lamar Jackson. You know, I really do kind of laugh at the notion that players don't want to come here and play with Lamar because he's one of the very best young players in the NFL. And we've got a lot of other young players as well that fit that criteria. So I think it's a great place to play. I think people want to play here. I think it's a team that's positioned well for the future. We've got one of the great coaches in the NFL. We've got one of the great owners in the NFL. We've got a facility here. We've got a stadium. We've got a great fan base. There's a lot of reasons to be very excited about the Baltimore Ravens moving forward.
Ryan?
Yeah, Eric, just to close it out with a wide receiver question here. You guys had a very young wide receiver core. How do you evaluate how some of those young guys, including the rookies, performed this season? Like you said, it was tough without all the practices for them. But how do you evaluate them moving forward? And do you feel like you would be better served or you would want to add another veteran to that mix?
Well, I thought the young guys emerged and played pretty well. You know, again, it's not a traditional offense, so they're being asked to do some different things blocking wise. There's a more physical aspect to playing receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. You know, I was really, really encouraged by Marquise. Over the last 8 games of the season, he became a legitimate playmaker for us and a clutch guy. Scored a bunch of touchdowns, made some big plays. You know, in the playoff games, he was a force in both of those games. And he showed some great skill, ability to run after catch. He made some clutch catches. You know, I thought that, you know, Boykin made some plays. He made some clutch plays for us. The young guys, Devin, Duvernay, James Prochet, showed some special teams ability, made some plays here and there. I think their best football's ahead of both of those guys. We're very happy with both those guys as young receivers that came in a very difficult situation this year with no OTAs and essentially no real training camp, so to speak, with games. We're excited about both those guys. We really are. And, you know, so, you know, there's certainly more room for improvement with everybody. at that position. But again, as I've said it a few times, there's really more room for improvement with virtually everybody on our team, on our coaching staff, and in scouting, including me. So we've all got to do a better job if we really want to take this thing to the next level, which means playing in the Super Bowl or playing in 2 weeks. That's our goal. That's our challenge, and we are very focused on that.
Hey, Eric, we appreciate your time. And to the media corps, we appreciate your time as well, and we will see you back here soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.